When you use someone's name, do it sparingly but with purpose. This is how you balance respect with charm. Here's the controversial part. Manipulating emotions doesn't always feel wrong. Is it really so bad if you're using these methods to help someone feel good about themselves? We all have insecurities in moments when we feel invisible. Sometimes, a little extra attention, like hearing your name at the right moment, is all it takes to brighten someone's day. So yes, I'm suggesting you use this to your advantage, but not in a way that sacrifices honesty. Make people feel seen, but not because it benefits you. Do it because, deep down, everyone wants to feel significant. It's a delicate balance. The name is simply a tool, but how you use it determines whether you're being manipulative or sincere. And people can tell the difference. Use their name just enough to remind them they matter, but keep it subtle so it doesn't feel forced. Charm is about making people feel important, but the key is to make them believe they truly are important to you, not just in that moment, but in the bigger picture. Listen to understand, not just to respond. Listening is one of the most overlooked skills in the art of charm, yet it's the foundation of making people feel genuinely special. The issue is, most of us don't truly listen. We're too busy waiting for our turn to speak. We focus on crafting the perfect response, so we end up missing the chance to actually hear what someone is saying. And that's the quickest way to make someone feel invisible. Here's a controversial truth. If you're not listening to understand, you're wasting your time. I'd done it too, sitting through conversations, nodding along pretending to be engaged, while internally planning my next point. And guess what? People can feel that. They know when you're just waiting for your turn to talk. It doesn't make them feel valued. It makes them feel used. That's not charm. That's selfishness. But when you listen to genuinely understand, you're not only showing respect, you're also creating a deeper connection. You're giving them space to be heard without the pressure of a back and forth debate. I remember once having a conversation with a colleague who was clearly struggling. My instinct was to jump in with advice and try to fix things, but I stopped myself. I just listened. No interruptions, no advice, just my full attention. And you know what? They opened up even more because they felt safe. By the end of the conversation, they said, "I've never felt so heard." That was the moment I realized that sometimes the best thing you can do is simply listen. Here's the deeper message. In a world full of noise, genuine listening is a rare and valuable gift. People don't always want constant advice or opinions. They want to feel understood. They want to know that someone truly gets them. And when you can offer that, you instantly stand out as someone who cares. That's real charm. So stop listening just to reply. Listen to understand. That's how you make people feel truly seen and valued. And that's where the magic of connection happens. End conversations first, but always on a high note. Ending a conversation is an art, and it's often misunderstood. Here's a little secret. The most charming people don't just engage in conversations, they master the timing of their exit. I learned this the hard way through trial and error. I used to stay in conversations long after they had peaked, thinking that sticking around showed dedication or interest. But here's the twist. Staying too long can actually lessen the impact of your presence. I remember a networking event where I was trying to make connections. I found myself chatting with a prominent industry figure. Everything was going smoothly. I was engaged, making witty remarks, and feeling like I was hitting all the right notes. But I didn't know when to leave. I stayed until the conversation had run its course, and by the end, it felt more like a prolonged performance than an engaging discussion. The result? I left an impression, but not the kind I wanted. The person was polite, but I could tell I had overstayed my welcome. The real lesson here is understanding the power of a perfectly timed exit. Ending the conversation first, but on a high note, leads people with a lingering sense of satisfaction and a desire for more. It's like walking out of a great movie just before the credits roll, leaving the audience craving a sequel. This strategy isn't about being rude or uninterested. It's about maximizing the impact of your presence. Here's a controversial thought. Most people don't know how to leave a conversation gracefully because they're too focused on not being rude. But being overly concerned with manners can actually be more damaging than making a quick, impactful exit. When you leave while the conversation is still enjoyable, you're not just avoiding overstaying your welcome. You're also ensuring that your departure feels like a natural conclusion, not a forced ending. For instance, I've had colleagues who insisted on hanging around after meetings or social events, trying to keep the conversation going long after the energy had faded. It was as if they were afraid of leaving, thinking they might miss out on something. What they didn't realize was that by staying, they often ended up diminishing their own appeal. The charm lies in knowing when the conversation has reached its peak and then leaving while everyone still feels good about it. Ending a conversation first can feel a bit like a game. And yes, it can be a little manipulative. But it's not about being deceptive. It's about controlling the dynamic to ensure that your exit is memorable. The high note you leave on is a deliberate choice, a final impression that sticks with people long after you've gone. It's the difference between leaving a party while it's still lively and being the last one there, making awkward small talk while everyone else has moved on. So embrace the art of the well-timed exit. Leave when the conversation is still fresh, interesting, and enjoyable. It's a calculated move that speaks volumes about your social skills and self-awareness. People remember how you made them feel, not just what you talked about. And if you can leave them with a positive, lingering impression, your charm won't just be a fleeting effect. It will keep them thinking about you long after you've left the room. Remember the little details. Paying attention to the small things is like holding the key to someone's emotional vault. It's one of the easiest yet most powerful ways to make others feel truly valued. But here's where most people get it wrong. They focus on the big stuff, thinking that remembering a birthday or job title is enough. That's not where real charm lies. The magic is in the details, the little things in a conversation that most people overlook. I learned this the hard way. Early on, I'd focus on remembering the big things, names, significant milestones, but I'd forget the small, seemingly trivial details. Things like someone mentioning they were looking for a new hobby or that they preferred a certain kind of tea. It showed in my conversations. They were surface level, and my connections felt shallow. I was being friendly, but not memorable. One day, a close friend casually mentioned they were trying to learn guitar, a detail they hadn't shared with many people. Weeks later, I asked, "How's the guitar practice going?" Their reaction was priceless. They were genuinely shocked that I remembered something they thought was insignificant. That's when it hit me. What you remember tells people what you value about them. When you notice the small details, it shows that you're not just listening. You're invested in them. Here's the controversial truth. Remembering small details is a form of subtle control. By recalling those tiny fragments, you're showing people that you're paying attention in ways others don't. It's like offering them a piece of your focus, making them feel important without explicitly saying so. This quiet yet powerful approach builds trust and rapport. And yes, it can be manipulative. It can be used to charm people and make them feel special, even if your true intention is to get something from them later. But the point is, it works. Let me be blunt. People crave this kind of attention. In a world where everyone is glued to their phones or too caught up in their own lives, remembering small details about someone else's life is a rare and valuable gift. It's something people don't even realize they need until they experience it. When someone feels like you've noticed those little things, they start to open up to you in ways they wouldn't with others. You become the person they trust, the one who pays attention to things that others ignore. For example, I once worked with a colleague who casually mentioned her favorite chocolate. I stored that detail in my mind, not thinking much of it at the time. Months later, when I was buying gifts for the team, I remembered it and got her that exact chocolate. She was touched, not because it was extravagant, but because I remembered. That small gesture completely changed our dynamic. She became more open, and our working relationship became much more relaxed and productive. It wasn't about the chocolate. It was about the fact that I recognized she mattered enough for me to remember something so small. The deeper message here is simple. The little details you remember create a huge ripple effect. People are constantly bombarded with superficial interactions. Everyone is in a rush, skimming over conversations and treating connections like checklists. But when you stop to remember something specific, something most people would overlook, it sends a powerful message that you value moments others ignore. It's not just charming, it's transformative. You go from being a casual acquaintance to someone people rely on, someone who genuinely cares. The best part, it doesn't take much effort. Just pay attention. Take a mental note when someone shares something small because to them, it's never insignificant. And let's face it, this approach also gives you an edge in both social and professional settings. Being the person who remembers the details makes you stand out. In a competitive world, people are drawn to those who make them feel valued in ways others don't. So yes, remembering the little details can make you more likable and influential. But don't mistake it for just being nice. It's a strategic move, one that can pay off in both your personal and professional life. In the end, it's not about pretending to be perfect. It's about being present. The little details may seem small, but they hold the power to build lasting connections. And people will always remember how you made them feel, long after they've forgotten the exact words you said. Be vulnerable, but in a calculated way. Vulnerability is a double-edged sword. When used wisely, it's a powerful tool. Opening up can foster deep connections, making you seem real, approachable, and even charismatic. But here's the catch. True charm doesn't come from spilling your heart out without thinking. It comes from sharing just enough of your vulnerability to be relatable without losing control of the situation. It's a delicate balance, and yes, it can be a form of manipulation when used strategically. Let's face it, people love vulnerability. It's what breaks down walls and makes you human. But if you believe that being open means revealing every aspect of yourself every time someone asks how you're doing, you're setting yourself up for failure. I've been there. I once thought that the more I shared about my personal struggles, the more people would trust me and feel a deeper connection. I tell stories about my challenges, mistakes, and failures, thinking it would make my relationships stronger. For a while, it worked, until it didn't. What I didn't realize at the time was that too much vulnerability can backfire. When you share too much, too soon, it can make you appear weak, desperate for attention, or even manipulative in a negative way. People start to wonder why you're so eager to expose your flaws. Are you looking for sympathy? Are you fishing for validation? Or worse, do you lack boundaries and overshare out of a need for attention? That's when I learned that being vulnerable isn't about complete transparency. It's about knowing how much to share and when. About strategic transparency. Here's a personal example. I was once in a meeting where the tension was thick, and I could tell my colleagues were ready to disengage. Instead of pushing through the conversation with fake confidence, I decided to share a story about a costly mistake I had made at work. But I didn't just throw it all out there. I framed it in a way that showed I had learned from the experience and turned it into a strength. By sharing just the right amount of vulnerability, I made myself relatable without losing my authority. The atmosphere shifted immediately. People started opening up, sharing their own concerns and mistakes. Suddenly, I wasn't just another person in the room. I was someone they could relate to, someone they could trust. The controversial truth is that being vulnerable in a strategic way is a tactic. You're not just sharing to connect, you're sharing to control the narrative. By revealing something personal, you're building trust and intimacy. But here's the key. You only reveal what you want them to see. It's like playing poker. You never show all your cards, just enough to keep them intrigued. This doesn't mean you're being fake. It means you're being selective. You choose which parts of your vulnerability will benefit you, while keeping other parts of yourself hidden until they've earned the right to know them. This kind of calculated vulnerability works in personal relationships too. Think about times when someone has shared something deeply personal with you out of the blue. It can feel unsettling, even uncomfortable. Now compare that to someone sharing their struggles after you've already built a rapport. The difference is timing and intention. One feels forced, the other feels natural. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about carefully crafting how you present yourself. Here's the deeper message. Vulnerability is a powerful tool, but it's only effective if you can control it. You don't need to open up about your deepest fears and insecurities to form a connection. In fact, oversharing can dilute the very connection you're trying to create. True charm comes from being selective with your vulnerability, sharing it at just the right moments, with just the right people, in just the right way. Yes, this is controversial. Many people think vulnerability means complete openness. But the truth is, complete openness isn't always strategic. In the wrong context, it can leave you exposed and even backfire. The most charismatic people know how to be vulnerable in a way that draws people in while still maintaining their sense of self-possession. They control how much of themselves they reveal, and by doing so, they maintain their charm and build deeper, more meaningful connections. At the end of the day, vulnerability isn't just about being honest. It's about being strategically honest. It's about revealing just enough of yourself to make people feel connected while still controlling the story you're telling. When done right, this balance makes you unforgettable because people will see you as authentic, yet someone who knows their worth and isn't afraid to show it. Ask deep questions, but don't answer them. Asking deep questions is one of the most underrated skills when it comes to building meaningful connections. But here's the twist. It's not about you answering those questions. It's about making the other person feel like the center of attention, giving them space to open up and share their inner world while you remain a bit more enigmatic. And that, my friends, is where the real charm lies. Let's break it down. When you ask someone a deep question, something more profound than the typical "how's work?" or "what's new?", you're inviting them to share something that goes beyond the surface. You're saying, "I'm genuinely interested in who you really are, not just what you show to the world." But here's where it gets tricky. Many people think that deep questions should be mutual. They ask, you answer, and then you both take turns. That's where most people get it wrong. Answering those same questions yourself takes the spotlight off them and weakens the impact of your curiosity. Years ago, I was at a dinner party with some colleagues, and the conversation had become dull. People were stuck in small talk, and the energy in the room felt flat. So I decided to shake things up. I turned to one of my colleagues and asked, "What's something you've always wanted to do but have been too scared to try?" The mood shifted instantly. This person began sharing a dream they had kept hidden for years, a solo trip across Europe. The room quieted, and all attention was on them as they glowed with excitement, revealing something deeply personal. When they finished, they turned to me and asked, "What about you?" At that moment, I could have shared my own story, something equally vulnerable. But instead, I deflected in a charming way. I smiled and said, "Oh, we'll get to me later, but I want to hear more about why you haven't gone on that trip yet." Just like that, the spotlight stayed on them, and they kept talking. I became the person who cared enough to ask, but mysterious enough to keep my own cards close to my chest. By the end of the night, people were telling me how great the conversation was, even though I hadn't shared much about myself. The secret, I made it about them. Now here's the controversial part. Charm isn't just about being open or sharing your soul. Sometimes, the most captivating people are the ones who remain a little mysterious, who create space for others to shine without giving too much of themselves away. People love talking about themselves, especially when they feel like the person they're talking to genuinely cares. Asking deep questions puts them in the spotlight, but not answering them keeps you in control of the conversation. You're the conductor, directing the flow of attention where you want it to go. I'm not saying you should be evasive or secretive all the time. It's about balance, You want to engage people with meaningful conversations, but you don't want to overshare or overshadow them. If you reveal too much about yourself, you lose that aura of intrigue. Being slightly enigmatic makes people curious, and curiosity is the foundation of attraction, whether in social or professional situations. Let me give you another example. I once worked with a colleague who was incredibly charming in a very subtle way. He would ask thought-provoking questions like, "What's something you wish more people understood about you?" Or, "If you could relive one moment in your life, what would it be?" He got everyone talking, sharing, and opening up. But he almost never answered those questions himself. At first, I found it odd, but over time, I realized it was intentional. He wasn't being distant, he was being strategic. People wanted to be around him because they felt understood, even though they knew very little about him. His charm came from his ability to keep the focus on others while maintaining an air of mystery. The deeper message here is that asking deep questions shows you're not interested in surface-level interactions. It shows you're invested in truly understanding someone. But not answering those same questions keeps the dynamic one-sided in a way that works to your advantage. You remain the curious, caring listener, the person who makes others feel special without ever revealing too much of your own vulnerability. It creates a magnetic pull. People want to know more about you, but you're not giving it all up front. It's this delicate balance between openness and restraint that makes you memorable. And here's where it gets even more controversial. Withholding answers isn't about being dishonest. It's about managing perception. When you ask deep questions but don't answer them, you're controlling the pace and tone of the conversation. You're directing the emotional energy toward them, allowing them to feel important and valued. It's a calculated move that shows you're not just casually engaging. You're crafting an interaction that leaves them thinking about you long after the conversation ends. In the end, charm isn't about being an open book. It's about being a book people want to keep reading, even if they can only peek at a few pages at a time. So ask those deep questions. Get people talking. Make them feel seen. But keep your answers to yourself, because sometimes the most intriguing thing you can do is leave a little mystery in the air. That's how you make people feel special around you, while keeping them wanting more. At the end of the day, charm isn't about pretending to be someone you're not or being liked by everyone. It's about mastering the subtle art of making people feel special without losing yourself in the process. The key is balance. Show vulnerability, but keep a little mystery. Ask deep questions, but don't always answer them. Charm is about making others feel important, while maintaining your own self-respect and boundaries. The truth is, real charm isn't just about being likable. It's about leaving a lasting impression by knowing when to hold back and let others shine. Yes, some may call it manipulative, but when done with good intent, it's simply the art of meaningful connection. Charm isn't just a social trick. It's a reflection of how you see yourself and others. When you make people feel truly seen and heard, you create moments that stay with them. But remember, you're still in control. And that's the power. Charm is about leaving an impact, making them feel something real. And that's what keeps them coming back.